It's an absolutely crazy day in the world of Magic the Gathering. We have just been given some very strange spoilers for the upcoming Aetherdrift set, including a change to Magic that has never been made before. On top of that, Wizards of the Coast has revealed the first Chaos secret lair, and it appears they don't have much faith in it.
Magic. History.
I'm an old wizard!
The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for a juicy installment of Mega Magic news. We've got Aetherspark information. We've got the Chaos Vault craziness. Before we talk about that, just want to let you know I have released my newest video over on the movie review channel that I have, where we are talking about the best movies of 2024, and it is a lot of fun. People are enjoying it, but that channel is small, so I'm looking to get it growing, and I would love it if you went over and checked out my newest video and subscribed. So I will leave a link to that pinned down in the top of the comment section. Now, let's dive in to what's going on with Aetherdrift specifically. Now, the spoilers that we have been given are not the actual cards. The previews won't start until next month, but the information that they gave us is absolutely wild. Obviously, the biggest thing is the fact that they're literally changing the name of Kaladesh. So an entire plane is having its name shifted from what it was into a brand new name, which is obviously quite strange. We don't normally have that. Wizards of the Coast gave a specific reason for that, and so I'm going to go over it just briefly here, right? So it says, when we first started working on Aetherdrift, we were excited for Magic to return to one of the players' most beloved planes, a bright and hopeful world of invention that took inspiration from real-world India. We knew that we had heard feedback at the release of the original Kaladesh that the name carried unfortunate connotations in some dialects of Hindi. I had never actually heard this. This was my first time hearing about this. We wanted to ensure our return to the plane was done thoughtfully and respectfully, so as an early step in building the Aetherdrift set, we engaged a group of subject matter and language experts to work with us and help guide us as we build the set. Our goal was to find a way to honor the spirit of the plane and its real-world inspiration. Here's what our consultant said. When we created the original Kaladesh set, we chose the word Kala as a word that can mean tomorrow or art, combined with Desh, meaning home or country. Unfortunately, the term Kala can also be associated with the meaning black and also often carries derogatory meaning when applied to a person. So ultimately, they said, we didn't want that connotation to hang over this plane each time we visited it, so we're taking Aetherdrift as our opportunity to implement a new game. And so they came up with a bunch more names. They showed them to two consultants, and eventually they came up with the name Avishkar, which basically derives from a word that means invention. And so it was vetted, and they decided that's what they were going to do going forwards. Now, in terms of the way this affects the lore, they're not changing it to go the route of, it was always called Avishkar, it was never Kaladesh. What they're saying now is the consulate that was in charge of Kaladesh has been replaced with a new government, but in a, not like like a full-on riot overthrowing kind of way, in a more friendly kind of way, in a more peaceful way, I should say. So they've ultimately changed the government of the world, and at the same time, they've changed the world name to Avishkar. So going forwards, Kaladesh will not be referenced unless they're talking about old stuff from the pre-Avishkar era. And there's a little bit more information that they've given. There's an entire Planeswalkers guide that goes more into depth. But just to give you a rough overview of how it's going to work with Aetherdrift, is there's going to be 10 different racing factions. They're all going to be competing for the ultimate prize, the Aetherspark, which is a magical artifact that will let the bearer who has it wander around as if they're a planeswalker from plane to plane, but the spark isn't actually part of their body. So the idea of this is going to be, this is the ultimate prize for the race, And the race originated as a sprint to the Inventors Fair. Every year they have the Inventors Fair. So the night before the Inventors Fair, they would have the sprint, which was this crazy race to get there. But it was like an underground kind of race. Think like secret street racing. So at the point we're getting it in the Aetherdrift story, it's actually only going to be the second year of this being legit. So the reason, obviously, I decided to talk about these spoilers is specifically because of the name change to the plane. The rest of it is flavor details, and I will most likely have something going over the Planeswalker's Guide over on my lore channel, Fantasy Geographic. So the other item we have to discuss today is the Chaos Secret Lair, which is a brand new thing Wizards of the Coast has put on offer. And it looks to me like they don't have any real faith in this secret lair. So what we're going to do is go through all the cards, and then I'll explain to you why it appears that this was a essentially holdover from before that they didn't feel brave enough to actually release. Let's go look at the cards now. So we start out the fairiest drop of all with Estrid's Invocation. 1 blue and 2, you can see the casting cost up here in the top corners, for an enchantment that has, I mean, the look of a Smashing Pumpkins album. When I look at this artwork, it is pretty funky, it is pretty striking, but obviously it's very bare when it comes to details. And the reason for that is they went ahead and put the actual wording for the card on the back. So you can see the casting cost is still up there at the top. And it says, you may have Estrid's Invocation enter the battlefield as a copy of an enchantment you control, except it has, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile this enchantment. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So clearly a very powerful enchantment copying effect. Essentially, it's just copy enchantment with the ability to keep bouncing it out of play and bringing it back so that if you want to change it into anything else or have it trigger come into play abilities, you get to do that. And the flavor text says, purely enchanting. The magic will linger long after you've reached the end. And that is a quote from Talion the Kindly Lord, because the concept behind this is each of these secret lair cards is supposed to be the front and back covers of essentially a fantasy novel. So if you take a look, this would be the front of the book, and it does have that vibe with all the stylized graphics along the outer edge. And then on the back, you have literally what would be the description of what happens in the book, and then a quote from somebody attesting to how good the book is. So this is a very interesting concept for a secret lair. The next card we have is Tuvasa the Sunlit. Now this artwork was actually leaked years ago, and I completely forgot about it. When it first came out, I said, I can't wait for whatever secret lair this is going to be in. And then we went years, it felt like, before it saw the light of day in this Chaos Lair. So Tuvasa the Sunlit is a legendary merfolk shaman. The artwork depicting her underwater with these two fish kind of swimming in on opposite directions with that funky symmetry as she's pouring out a bowl of, I presume, some kind of magical liquid, unless this is supposed to be her up out of the water, standing on land somewhere, and these fish are swimming in the air. It's very, very evocative, and it does genuinely feel like a book cover. I like the way they have the mana symbols arrayed down here at the bottom, and the power and toughness down in the bottom corner there. So ultimately, not too shabby in terms of the way they've put the information on the front. But again, you need to look at the back. And this one is the hardest to read. This layer is only in foil, and I presume the physical cards will be easier to read. Tuvasa the Sunlit gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Whenever you cast your first enchantment spell each turn, draw a card. Pretty strong ability. And the flavor here says, beautifully wrought and achingly compelling. A classic coming-of-age romp that delves into the depths of what it really means to be fish. And that's from Troyan, Gutsy Explorer. So, you might have noticed a theme. Troyan, Talion, they're both coming from the same world, right? And ultimately, this one very much evokes the concept of a book as well. And this one actually if you wanted to, you could just use this side of the card pretty much. It's got most of the information. Sure, it doesn't say she's a merfolk, but there's more information on this side. And that's one of the biggest problems with this secret lair, is the fact that you can't really enjoy one side or the other all on its own. Like, sure, you know what Tuvasa does when you look at this side, but does your opponent? Having the information available for your opponent, I feel, is key, and everybody plays with sleeves. It's not like you could use these in see-through sleeves because they'd be like marked cards, right? So ultimately, the choice here, it's secret lair. So this is the place to do things like that, but it feels, especially when we get to what is it, the next card? Yeah, Aetherdrift the Masked, okay? So this one in particular is a planeswalker with 3 activated abilities, right? So the casting cost is actually done in a fun way where you can see that it's in the 4 different corners. It's interesting that they put the 1 in a blue symbol when you see the whites in the white symbol, greens in the green, and then blues in the blue. And this is also blue, but maybe a slightly lighter blue. This feels like a poster for a barber shop from like the 1800s, or like a playbill for an actual play that you would go to, right? So it's Aetherdrift the Masked, legendary planeswalker. She's got 3 loyalty. That's what the 3 stands for. I like the whole actual mask in the picture there, and the little animal faces that are down there as other masks as well. There's like 6 different options of masks, but really when we flip over the card and you take a look at the actual abilities, you have to remember 3 abilities, and these are pretty complex abilities. +2, untap each enchanted permanent you control. -1, create a white aura enchantment token named Mask attached to another target permanent. This token has enchant permanent and Umbra armor. And -7, mill 7 cards. Return all non-aura enchantment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then do the same for aura cards. And by the way, Aetherdrift can be your commander. So you look at this and go, that is a ton of information to remember. Check out the flavor text. A sordid tale of deception and stolen identity. This masterpiece of mystery will have you questioning who you are and what is real. And there's Ashiok. Now, she's not a denizen of Eldraine, but that was one of the places that we saw Ashiok recently. So ultimately, they're all tying in to the Eldraine plane, okay? And then the final card from the secret lair is the strangest one. Steely Resolve. This could be on the cover of a book. It could also be on like a beverage label. It's got that kind of a vibe, maybe a Christmas beverage. And what's really tricksy about it, and took me a long time to notice, is the casting cost is actually tucked away up in the nuts there. You can see, or maybe that's a bloom. Those are either little flower blooms or nuts that are hanging off of the plant. But either way, the casting cost is secreted up there. Secreted, not secreted. Those are 2 different words. So, Steely Resolve is an old school enchantment from Onslaught. 1 green and 1. What does it do? Well, as it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type have Shroud. An inspiring story filled with heroic creatures joining forces to combat a common enemy. What's not to like? This tale made me want to don my cloak, grab a longsword, and head out in search of adventure. And that's Elevere of the Wild Court. Where's the Wild Court from? You guessed it, Eldraine. So, this card is very strange. This whole secret lair cares very much about enchantments, but this enchantment gives your guy Shroud, and Shroud says they can't be targeted at all, which means you have like planeswalkers that care about auras, and this shuts off auras to your, like, being able to be used on your creatures because you choose the creature type and make them invulnerable to being targeted. So the secret lair feels very disparate. And I believe what happened here is Wizards of the Coast actually intended to release this secret lair around the time of Throne of Eldraine. But then they decided, wait a minute, this isn't popular enough. For some reason or another, they decided it wasn't popular enough, or maybe the secondary market of some of the cards tanked, or maybe they just did another crossover deal that they made, and they had to yank this secret lair out of a super drop and replace it with something else. But the biggest telling fact to me that this is an unwanted secret lair is the price tag, right? This is only available in foil. Foil secret layers are always at least $40. Instead of selling this at $40, they're selling this one at $25. Bear in mind, when they have had errors with secret layers, for example, the circular logic, where they literally printed a counterspell as a sorcery, so you can't even use the card, they only give a $5 discount on that. They're giving triple that discount on this secret layer, $15. So the Chaos Vault, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be the dumping grounds for all of the unwanted layers, or maybe not unwanted, but unworkable at the time. And I expect that there are going to be more of these popping up really soon. They call this an experiment, saying, hey, we're figuring out what's going on here. This is our first offering. So they might move the price point up in the future. But as far as I'm concerned, this secret layer is distracted. It's going in multiple directions. It doesn't really have cohesion, right? Like when you look at, for example, Estrid the Masked, right? The casting cost has green in it, and yeah, that ties in to the Steely Resolve. But then you look at Estrid's abilities, and it's like, oh, look at that. I return auras from the graveyard. I literally make aura enchantment tokens and attach them to other permanents. And it goes against the grain with this. And Steely Resolve, that's like the biggest card in this box, apparently. So ultimately, it is a very scattered product. And it's curious why Wizards chose to go this way with it. And it's even more curious that they realized that it wasn't a great secret layer and held it back, and now we've got this new chaos experiment. But for now, that wraps up everything that I have to talk about. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I released a brand new movie review over on my movie review channel, and I would love for you to go over there, subscribe, check it out, because the channel is small and I'm trying to grow it up into something bigger. So thanks for coming by, my friends. Big shout out to the channel's members and patrons. You guys rule, and I will see you all in the next video.